My name is Jamaica Mandola, and I'm the Assistant Director of Constituent Engagement with the WSU Alumni Association, which was just rated number 7 of our alumni networks by the Princeton Review. Congratulations. The Alumni Association is expanding our alumni career support offerings, including today's event, Cougs Connect and Spark 60, in addition to other initiatives. Watch for more information about these offerings. Welcome to the Crimson to Career Alumni Panel, Retirement Readiness for Cougs Approaching Retirement or Already Retired. Past sessions geared towards mid-career professionals and recent grads and job seekers are posted on our YouTube channel. You'll find a link to that in the chat. During the panel portion of the program, for the best experience for participants, we'll be taking questions through the Q&A feature. We will monitor the questions and reply or ask our panelists to address them as time permits. To ensure the optimal viewing experience, only panelists and moderators will be on camera and have audio enabled. The WSUAA requests that attendees show respect and professionalism towards our panel members and each other. An Alumni Association team member will monitor the lobby and the chat, and action will be taken if necessary. Today's webinar will be recorded and available for viewing following the session on the YouTube channel. As we do before every program, we like to acknowledge that WSU campuses statewide are on the homeland of Native people who have lived in this region for a memorial. The university expresses its deepest respect for and gratitude towards these original and current caretakers. Pledging and forged relationship will consist of mutual trust, respect, and reciprocity. We encourage you to take a moment to reflect on the Native people associated to where you might live or work today. So that we can jump right into the session, we are dropping a series of links into the chat that showcase many of the amazing things that are happening because of you, our WSU alumni, students, faculty, staff, parents, and friends. At this time, I would like to introduce today's moderator, Liz Ryan. She is the Assistant Vice President and Director of Gift Planning for the WSU Foundation. She's a proud WSU honors graduate who's used her law degree, excuse me, and with her 25-year career with the WSU Foundation, helping donors meet their financial and personal goals through creative gift plans that impact WSU now and for the future. Liz?
Good afternoon, everybody. Excited to be here talking about one of my favorite topics, and those are the panelists also. We're going to be doing a session today that's designed for people who are approaching retirement or already there. Just an important disclaimer and reminder to begin with, the information that we have for you today is for educational and informational purposes only. It's general and not individualized financial, investment, legal, or tax advice. And since everyone's circumstances are unique, before making any decisions of your own regarding investments, taxes, or financial matters, please consult with qualified professionals. Any views expressed by the presenters or the materials shared by them are not necessarily a reflection of the views of WSU or its related entities. So now we're going to move on to the fun stuff and talk to Mike and Cindy Coleman, who are a WSU class of 1968 real-life retirees. I see them there on the screen. Welcome. They both spent their career as teachers, and now in their retirement, they are helping fellow educators learn about this very topic. And so Mike and Cindy are kind of the engine behind this. One of the folks that suggested that this might be a great topic for Career Connections. And so we're going to ask them to take about 5 minutes to share about their personal experience in retirement and the insights they have from their own lives and teaching others. Welcome. And the mic.
Hi.
Hi.
We graduated from WSU in 1968, which is probably before a lot of you were born. And our biggest problem in retirement is technology, keeping up with it. But at any rate, we were teachers for a long time. And during those years, we were really busy with our jobs and our children and everything. And so we didn't do a whole lot with WSU. But around 2000, we both retired and we started going to season tickets with the football game. So we kept coming over to Pullman five times every fall at least, and really loved it. And we love the feeling of the town. We love the feeling on the campus. And so we got more involved at that point and put WSU in our will. And then at the beginning, it was a set amount of money, and then it we redid it around 2000 when we retired, and we put it into a percentage. And that is a better way to do it because that can be changed easily. And also, as your money goes up, the money to WSU goes up. So that is what we did with that. We started working with Justin, who is a member of, I think, a member of Jamaica's team. And he found out about us teaching retirement classes. And so then he thought, oh, that would be a good idea for the Alumni Association to put on. So Mike is going to talk to you about our retirement classes.
These retirement classes, I have to give you a back history. I was president of the Bellevue Education Association. And what we were doing is I had 100 teachers a year retiring. We hit that thing. And then at least 10% would come back and say, can you get my job back? I said, not easily. And because they made a mistake or they didn't think about, and we'll have some other experts that can go that. So we eventually set up, and not us alone, but so for the last 30 years, we've set up seminars that cover Social Security, health and medicine, the state retirement system, all of them, because there's about multiple ones, and ways to save, how to get a financial planner, and urging them to get a financial planner and to get state wills drawn up. And we do 2-day Friday night and all day, most of the day Saturday. Some people take it 3 or 4 times, most once or twice. And they don't, it's all free. They pay a little bit for the food we do that. Other than that, it's free.
They're done around the state via the UNICEF districts for teachers. These are mostly teacher retirement seminars, although their spouses come and they're from all over the place. And if you're interested and you're in the public sector and you'd like to take one of these, you can check the UNICEF district in your area and find out. A lot of them are virtual and they're not as long as ours are, or they might be 2 different nights instead of one night and all the next day. But at any rate, that's what we do, and that's why we got going on this.
And we were asked, how do you find a financial planner? And great question. We found our financial planner by getting the wrong one. A guy signed us up when we were first starting, and we put some money in a program, and we never saw him again. The money was still there, but he didn't do anything. And good old WSU, actually, I have an econ minor because I was a history and English teacher. But we found another man who turned out, after much interview, and we spent a long time interviewing about our needs, and he asked us, and it worked great. And then when he retired, he sold the business. We had some other interview with the man who replaced him, and it worked excellent also. And so they asked us questions about life goals, whether we were aggressive or not aggressive. And I made sure they understood the pension plan now, because we have found that there are all types of financial planners. Not everybody, all of them are familiar with Washington State retirement systems. Some know lots and others not so much, because they don't deal with that very often.
Okay, the best advice we ever got, we were asked to tell you that. That was when our first guy that we talked to said,
The good one.
Every time you get a raise, put half of it, give half of it to me, and I'll invest it for you. And you won't even know it's not there because you didn't have it before, and you'll still have a raise. And we tried to do that. We weren't always great at half of it, but we did usually put more money in each time. And teachers, you may know, are on a sliding scale and you get raises for a while. And so that was when we were putting a lot of money in early in our life. And that's really important, because the longer it's in there, the more it can go up. And so that was our best advice. I was going to mention we use our required minimum, or RMDs, our required minimum distributions. You have to pay taxes on that if you had a tax sheltered plan for your retirement. And so to save some of those taxes, that's a good place to give money to WSU. And those are called qualified charitable distributions. And if you take some of your RMD and put it into a qualified charitable distribution, you don't have to pay taxes on it. So we do that for about 3 different things. It's got a lot of paperwork, so we don't do it for little amounts, but for larger amounts, we try to do that. So that's another good idea that we were told. And I don't know if we've used up our 5 minutes. We could mention medical plans if you want us to.
We'll have you join back in when we get to the Q&A time, but you guys are the perfect example. The retirees I talked to are busier than they were when they were working sometimes, and it seems like you have taken on another job. And anyway, we're so grateful for all you do for WSU, and feel free to jump back in when we get to the end if there's something you want to cover that we didn't get to. But
Thank
for
you,
now, I
Liz.
want
Thank
to
you.
I want to introduce the rest of our panelists. We have 3 experts with us today. The first one is Eric Green, and Eric is a certified financial planner and an investment fiduciary with Quantum Financial Planning. Eric brings more than 25 years of financial management experience to his work with individuals, families, business owners, and organizations. Like everybody here, he is a WSU graduate. His degree is in business and accounting, and he specializes in this topic of retirement planning, estate planning, and fiduciary guidance. He's an active leader in the Spokane community and serves on the board of the Union Gospel Mission, and he's decked out in his cougar clothes today. So welcome, Eric.
Thank you. Glad to be
Next,
here
we have
today.
Kyle. Kyle Ware is also a certified financial planner, and he's a senior VP and financial planner and senior portfolio manager with RBC Wealth Management. Going to get him spotlighted here so you can see him.
Let's see. How do I get on? There we go.
There you go.
Hello.
Kyle's
Good
also a
technology.
WSU grad with 35 years of experience in investment and financial planning and specializing in discretionary asset management. I want to know more about that word, and I know you'll be talking about that. He is also an active volunteer, longtime Spokane resident, and passionate about helping individuals and families plan for financial success and retirement readiness. So welcome, Kyle. And finally, we have Avery Frank, who's joining us as a CPA. He specializes in these same topics. He spent 7 years at Clifton Larson Allen after graduating from WSU, but just recently opened his own private CPA practice in the Montlake Terrace, Washington area in Western Washington here, where he helps his clients navigate tax and retirement planning for clients, and I think this is true of everyone, all degrees of complexity and various levels of wealth. So our third proud Coug alum, he also is a business administration grad with 3 concentrations in accounting, management, information systems, and entrepreneurship, which is one of the newer ones, but it's probably something we've had for 20 years. We're super glad you're here. All 3 of these gentlemen are members of the Plan Giving Advisory Board, which is a volunteer group of the WSU Foundation, where we get together on a regular basis to talk about, make sure our WSU Foundation staff is well versed on these topics, and sometimes we can bring specific scenarios to them and get advice to bring back to our donors. So before we kick it off, I'm just going to remind you that if you have a question, we're hoping to have some time at the end. You can utilize the Q&A message system at the bottom of your control panel, and we'll do our best to get to all those, as well as the ones that were submitted on the front end. So this is actually my favorite question. We want to go around, and we'll go in the same order that I introduced you. Ask you a couple of questions just to get to know you. And so tell us how you chose this career in your life's work. And then as you've gone through your career, tell us one piece of retirement advice that you have found can make the biggest difference in your clients' lives. We'll start with Eric and then go to Kyle.
Thanks.
Yeah.
I think I've got it unmuted.
We hear you.
So after studying accounting at WSU, I switched to personal finance. I started in finance and switched to accounting to get my career started. But I like people better than numbers, and have enjoyed a career doing financial planning and investment advisory now for more than 30 years. What was that? What was the second part of your question?
Second one was, as you look back on all these decades, if you could just pick one thing, what is the thing that you tell your clients that makes the biggest difference? What's your golden ticket piece of advice about prepping for retirement?
I'd say one of the goals I have for all the clients that I've worked with is to see themselves, I guess, as a steward of what they have in life, and to use it not just for themselves, but for the things that other things in their life that bring them joy and purpose. So that can be family, it can be organizations like WSU or other charities that they have a heart for, and to steward their resources in all those directions.
That is a good one. Appreciate that. Kyle, what drew you to this career of
Oh,
helping
man.
people with retirement?
I'm almost afraid to answer that question. I went to school at WSU in the late 80s, and for those of us that are old enough to remember the movie Wall Street, I thought, man, I want to be Gordon Gekko someday. Of course, somebody reminded me, they said, Kyle, you know Gordon Gekko goes to jail at the end of that movie. So it intrigued me on the whole idea of working on Wall Street and getting into investing. And the longer I got involved in investing, I realized that, learning about investments is one thing, but learning about the people behind the investments is another. And I'm going to reiterate what Eric said. I went to WSU to get a finance degree, but I realized that I'm less into numbers and more into people. And it gives me a lot of great joy being able to help people to achieve their goals. And when you realize, somebody once told me, people don't care what you know until they know that you care. And caring about your clients' lives and success has really been a driving force for why I enjoy getting up and doing what I do every day. And then your second question, I think, was what lessons did we, or what was your second question?
What's your all-time great piece of advice that you find applies to most people?
Well, the all-time best piece of advice I ever got actually was early on, somebody showed me a chart of the time value of money. And they said, Kyle, if you just took half the money you spent at the Coug on beer and pizza and burgers and put that into a Roth IRA, this is what it'll look like in 30 years, and you'll be skinnier because you didn't eat all that pizza and drink all that beer. And I'm like, man, if I could go back and revisit myself back in the Coug days and thinking, geez, if I'd only taken half that money I spent on beer at the Coug and put it into a Roth IRA, where I'd be today. So
Is it too late for those of us who are here because we're getting close to or retired, or I guess
oh
hopefully we
yeah,
all
like I said,
still
that's
have a
advice I
long
would have
horizon.
given the earlier crowd who is starting the retirement path. But never too late to cut back on beer and pizza at the Coug and put it into a Roth IRA.
Oh shoot, I thought you were going to say you're too old. Just go ahead and eat pizza.
Well, any more these days, if people have got their retirement numbers met, enjoy the slice of pizza and the beer. It's part of what you save for.
Thank you. Avery, help us get to know how you chose this career path and what's your best piece of advice.
Yeah, so I stumbled into my professional career. I was one of the silly people that started at WSU and said I actually want to do accounting right out of the gate. I didn't transition from some other major into accounting. And I had an internship doing audit, and I absolutely hated it. So I decided to give tax a try. And what I found was there's a lot of really good, very interesting problems to solve in tax. And like Eric and Kyle, I like working with people. So I've dedicated my career to getting to help people solve the problems in their life, which is, I think, probably the most fulfilling area of accounting I could find.
Awesome. So your career is a little shorter than the other two on the screen, but what would you say is your best piece of advice?
Yeah, I spend probably 50% of my time talking about death and dying and the transition of wealth from one generation to the next, which is very odd for someone as young as myself. But I spend a lot of my time talking to people about there are really four places that your wealth can go. You can enjoy it, you can give it to the government, you can give it to charity, and you can give it to your family. So the whole exercise of estate planning comes down to deciding which of those four buckets are you planning on putting your time, talent, and treasure into. And so focusing on that global picture sort of helps people get rid of the white noise. There's a lot of decisions, a lot of weird little things that can be done, but ultimately the planning process revolves around what do we do with those 4 different buckets.
Excellent way to bring this up to a high level, and it applies during life too, right? Not just definitely those 4
Absolutely.
buckets are there during our lives. Well, I'm excited to get rolling with our first topic, and we're going to hit first the idea of retirement income and withdrawal strategies. It's kind of the opposite of what we've been doing all our lives, is going from saving it all to how do you decide how much to spend and when. And so we're going to start with Eric, and we'd love to have you answer the questions. How does someone know whether they have enough, whether they're ready to retire? Can they afford it?
Great question, and it gets asked a lot. I think the starting point. Let me start with a story that I learned early in my career. I was working at one of the major banks, and we were engaged with a client to help a group of employees as they closed a plant. And this group of employees were all going to be cashed out of their pension plan. And we were tasked with meeting all of them and giving them some advice on how to approach that. And I can remember the lesson that I learned is some of the people who had the most money coming to them were the most unhappy because it just was never going to be enough, they thought. But I met one of the people I met with and spoke with who was maybe getting half as much as others, couldn't have been more excited and happier. And it all had to do with a perspective. He had married someone from the Philippines, and their plan was to move back to the Philippines. And the amount of money he was receiving, he was going to be able to live all his dreams without any worry. So really, it starts with knowing how much you need or how, this may sound boring, but you should have a budget. You should know how much it costs to live. And that's a starting point. For some people, it'll be a lot. For other people, it'll be more than they can afford. But knowing how much it costs to live your life the way you want, and knowing some of the, being able to put a price tag on some of the goals that you're trying to achieve. So that's a starting point. And a lot of people don't go through the exercise of budgeting and knowing how much it costs to live.
What are the primary sources that they should look at after they've kind of figured out to budget, to see what their budget is, to see if they can cover it? You mentioned pensions, but what are the other sources?
These days, there aren't a lot of people who are covered by a pension, employer provided pension. You can create a personal pension for yourself with insurance products, but Social Security for most people provides the most of their income sources. So look at some of those guaranteed income sources from Social Security, your spouse's Social Security, from maybe you do have a pension at work. Maybe you want to create a private pension with an annuity and have some more lifetime guaranteed income, and see where the gap is between what your goals are going to cost and what your guaranteed income is, and figure out how you're going to meet that gap with your savings. Savings can be your 401k, your personal savings, really your retirement savings and your personal savings. I mean, there's other sources of wealth that you might work into your long-term plan. For some people, the idea of retiring might be downsizing a house. There may be a lot of equity in their house that they don't need anymore. The kids are gone, it's bigger than they need, maybe they use some of that equity towards funding their retirement. I work with clients all the time who there's some family money, some inheritance, the sale of a business, other sources of assets that can be converted into retirement income as well.
Excellent. So Kyle, we'll go to you because one of the things that you probably have some control over is your investment portfolio, your savings. And Eric talked a little bit about kind of creating a pension for yourself with that savings. But what do we do about the fact that there's market volatility, there's inflation? How should we think about that?
Yeah, I appreciate that. And since Eric and I are both certified financial planners, I'm going to kind of probably reiterate some of the things he says. But when you're during the accumulation phase of life before retirement, I always say, just think about, being on a boat going out to a Great Barrier Reef or some island. You're going to get some choppy waves, but if you can handle that, just know that the destination is going to be fantastic when you get there. But when you go from the contribution phase of life to the distribution phase of life, market volatility can be a little scary because you're no longer making the money, and you're having to live off of your investments. So this is when the financial planner in me says, okay, you break down your funds into your expenses into your living expenses and your lifestyle expenses. Kind of like what Eric said, as long as you have guaranteed sources of income to meet your living expenses, taxes, food, shelter, etc., then you don't worry about the stock market because your living expenses are guaranteed from Social Security, pension, or an annuity. Your variable sources of income, like your investments, should meet your lifestyle expenses, like travel, entertainment, and stuff like that. Things that are going to cost more with inflation. So I say, when you take a look at that stuff from an investment point of view, I always say, think of the fact that, over time in capitalism, it's the best way to offset inflation, because think of companies like Coke and Pepsi. Coke and Pepsi are going to raise the cost of their product by a nickel. And if you like Coke and Pepsi, you pay that extra nickel. Hopefully your income and investments keep up with it. But over time, if Coke and Pepsi distribute a dividend and raise that dividend, it helps the stock price go up and it gives you income. So, you have to look at it that way from the investment point of view. You have to have a longer term outlook. Number two is the average recession can last up to 2 years. So I always tell clients, when doing your investments, look at your asset allocation, reduce your risk, don't take any more risk than necessary to meet your needs, wants, and wishes. But then take that fixed income portion of your portfolio and put it into laddered out CDs for like 2 years, so that if anything happens to the market, you've got some income, and then you let your growth investments ride. Because I had a client that freaked out about the market during about a year ago when President Trump announced the tariffs and the market went down. And I said, does this really affect whether you're going to drink a Coke or a Pepsi and buy that product? He goes, no. Well, you're going to be fine if you just, realize that this is noise in the market and not the fundamentals of the company. And so I tell this one client, says, so Kyle, what's your advice for dealing with the volatility? I said, turn off the TV, go for a walk. It's a beautiful day. And a year later, the market's up, and the noise of a year ago is simply that, noise. Just learn to distinguish noise from actual economic turmoil and have a plan that meets both of those.
Wonderful answer. I love that. And the analogy of the choppy waters, but the destination is worth it. And you can turn off the noise if you have a plan. We've got such big topics here. The next one we want to tackle is, I can't believe all we're biting off and trying to chew here, but the next big topic is about tax planning and retirement. And right after that, we're going to talk about budgeting for healthcare. So we'll start with our CPA, Avery, to tell us a little bit about strategic tax planning and how that's an integral part of making sure that your taxes don't erode your net worth in a way that you hadn't planned for.
Thanks, Liz. I want to start off with probably the easiest and most messed up is probably the easiest right word, way to save funds. Just as we head into retirement, people typically in their later years, they're in higher earning years, and they start the wind down. They execute on the second half of the financial plan. They go from accumulating to using the funds that they've set aside for retirement. And the whole time that they were building this wealth, if they went to work and they had a W-2, every single year, Uncle Sam's cut was taken out uniformly in their paycheck, and they had taxes withheld and remitted to the government just like clockwork. They never saw it unless they looked really close at their pay stubs, and that's what they're accustomed to. Fun fact, the Internal Revenue Code says you have to pay your taxes uniformly throughout the year if you don't want to pay an underpayment penalty. Right now, it's 7% that you could get to pay in addition to your tax bill to the Internal Revenue Service if you don't pay enough in estimated tax payments. Well, your whole lives working, you had estimated tax payments withheld just by going to work, and it wasn't a problem. Now, starting the second phase of your plan and using the wealth that you've accumulated, you have to get into a habit of paying the government their cut uniformly. And there's a 7% rate of return on paying your taxes timely because you're not going to write that check to Uncle Sam. So how can people approach that? Well, the default is you pay your taxes in quarterly installments. You can pay April 15th, June 15th, September 15th, and January 15th. It works. It's very boring. The downside is you have to write these really large checks and they come out of your bank accounts, and it is not a fun experience for anyone. A different way to approach that same kind of plan is to have taxes withheld from the sources that you can. Social Security, you can have tax withheld. Required minimum distributions, you can have tax withheld. Some pensions, you can have tax withheld. Doing that correctly is going to involve figuring out what your tax liability is and what you should actually pay, so you're not making an interest-free loan to Uncle Sam, and understanding what level of income you have. So between your tax advisor and wealth advisor, figuring out when and how you should make your estimated tax payments, you're going to save yourself 7% every year if the underpayment penalty rate stays where it's at today. So it's a super simple, and again, often forgotten or missed way to earn a great return. 7% right out of the gate is not too bad. The other thing that comes up, people quit, let's say retire at 62. They have a gap between 62 and when they would take Social Security. And they may be able to get lower income tax rates. Their income may drop from a 22% rate down to a 12% rate or a 0% rate. The 0% rate and the 12% rate and the 10% rate, they all represent a really good opportunity to take income and pay tax at a reasonable rate. When your required minimum distributions kick in at 72, when Social Security is finally taken, your income jumps. And so using those low income years immediately after retirement as an opportunity to look at things like Roth conversions so that you can have an after-tax bucket of funds to draw on, that can be a super helpful tool. And 10%, I mean, it's not pleasant to pay the tax, but timing your income with a low income year gives you an opportunity that you're never going to get again. You only have so much income that's taxed at a 0% rate or a 10% rate or a 12% rate every year. So together with your wealth advisor and your tax advisor, building a plan for taking income, recognizing income, and choosing to pay tax earlier can actually set you up to pay less tax in your lifetime. This is not a how do we save the most tax this year sort of answer. It's how can we save the most tax over your retirement? And that's framing that and recognizing that paying tax is not necessarily a bad thing can be really important to your overall plan. I will also just, the estate planner in me say, paying income tax can sometimes be helpful to mitigate other taxes, like estate tax. In Washington, we pay estate tax if you have more than $3 million. So balancing out, is it better to pay income tax or estate tax? It's a really important conversation to just get in front of. And sometimes paying income tax can reduce the estate tax bill. And so again, we're balancing what's the total cumulative tax bill that you're likely to pay. How do we disinherit the government to the greatest extent possible? That's the way that we want to approach thoughtful and successful tax planning in retirement.
That's complex stuff, but so important. So hopefully this kind of gives people a flavor of how they can save some money in retirement by figuring out when to take the income, when to pay the taxes. And we might get back to this if we have time at the end, but great stuff, big topic. And now we want to talk about another thing that everyone cares about is we all realize that the costs of healthcare are going to be a big consideration in retirement. And so I'd love for you, Kyle, to talk about how people should budget for that. What have you found that surprises your clients that maybe they hadn't thought about? And then I can help you because this is another big one. We got a lot of bullets here, but what are some of the tools they can use to pay for these costs? So what are they? What surprises people, and what are the tools they have for paying them over the rest of their lives?
As financial planners, we always use an inflation gauge, usually around 3%, but healthcare has been going up at a higher inflation rate simply because of the law of supply and demand. The baby boom generation is bigger than the generations behind it, and I hate to say it, there's just not enough people in healthcare. And so the law of supply and demand has caused pricing to go up. So I tell clients to budget healthcare inflation at 5 or 6% versus 3% for regular inflation. The other thing too is everybody looks at their healthcare costs and they think about just what are the premiums for insurance, but there's out-of-pocket stuff that may not be covered. Like if you have an ambulance ride for a reason and you have to pay out of pocket, that's over $1,000. So, this is why we always tell clients to have an emergency fund. So when budgeting for retirement, for healthcare, once you do get to age 65, you're eligible for Medicare. So one of the advice, and for those that, Medicare is broken into parts A, B, C, and D. Part A is hospital and B, and then C is Medicare Advantage plans and D is drug coverage. One of the best advices I've given clients is that once you're ready to get onto Medicare and you're not sure, how this works, each county has their own Medicare plans. And there's this organization here called the State Health Insurance Benefits Advisors. I pulled up their website. It's called SHIBA. And this is This is a free service through the state of Washington Office of the Insurance Commissioner, where you can actually go on there, look up a SHIBA office near you. They have seminars. I actually took one of my clients to a seminar. She brought all of her drug medications with her, and then she sat down and went through with the SHIBA advisor of the different plans available to see which one would work out best. So if you're going to go on Medicare, definitely look up Washington State Insurance Benefits Advisors. The acronym is SHIBA, and go to one of their free seminars. It's worth going to. The other thing too is when it comes to the cost of healthcare, and maybe I'm getting ahead of your next question, or just keep going.
I got to unmute no, you're doing great. Keep going.
Oh, okay. Because I know that one of the things I also tell clients is that when if you're pre-Medicare, pre-age 65, and you retire before that, you're going to have to go on to the healthplanfinder.org, which is the Washington State Health Plan Finder for Obamacare. And you can, get a plan to see what would be better. Do you go on COBRA, which only lasts for about 18 months, or get your own independent plan? So these are the things that I talk to clients about. But the other thing too is that from a tax point of view, and I'm sure Avery is familiar with this, if you're going to retire and get on Medicare, ask your accountant about Form SSA 44. That's Social Security Administration Form 44, because there's a thing called IRMA, which is the income related monthly adjustment premiums that look back 2 years. So your Medicare premiums are going to look back 2 years. If you're still if you were working, you have a higher number, they're going to be higher. But you have a one-time option of filling out this form saying, hey, I'm retiring now. Those 2-year look back numbers are no longer applicable, and it will drop your Medicare premium. So little trick of the trade, look into SSA 44 for IRMA. And then as far as other health costs, do know that Washington State does have the WA care plans. If you're still working, you're paying into it unless you got exempted out. Don't forget about that. I always tell clients when looking at the big expense in life, which is long-term care, that can cost like $10,000 a month in today's dollars, and the average stay in a care facility is like 3 years. I mean, that's 300,000. So I always say, try to plan on having that much when you get into your 80s and 90s set aside, unless you've got long-term care insurance. Because that, or if you have a life insurance, have a rider with long-term care on it. Just be aware of that potential future expense.
That's a whole nother thing we can get back to. Excellent resources, and long-term care planning is one that we could get back to
That's a whole
if
other
we have
topic.
time. But yeah, that's interesting about the 3-year average stay and the 300,000 and having a plan for that somehow. Our final kind of block that we want to get to before we get into the Q&A is talking about estate planning, and kind of back to Eric's golden ticket advice from the beginning. What is this all for? Thinking about your legacy, what you want to do for your family, what charities that you might care about. So this is important stuff too that we think about as we get into retirement years. Eric, if you could just give us a little overview. Each one of these questions is a seminar on its own, but what are the basic estate planning documents that everybody should have?
Well, that's a big group,
Yes.
but and a lot of the estate planning rules are state specific. So I'll just say for Washington, where I live, everyone should have a last will and testament document describing at your death how you want your assets to be paid and to whom. There's all kinds of provisions that might go into a will. It might even lead to creating a trust. But you should have a durable financial power of attorney. That document says if I can't manage my own affairs, if I'm get sick or something, who can stand in for me and make financial decisions and take care of financial responsibilities? And that's a document that it might come into effect as soon as you sign it, or it might have what they call a springing power, where it becomes effective as soon as something happens to you. And maybe it requires your doctor to sign a letter saying, Eric can't manage his affairs anymore, and so this power comes into effect. A living will is another document that kind of expresses your wishes for end of life. Do you want heroic measures that your family and the hospital and your doctors would take to sustain your life, or something less, and that when your time comes, you're happy to let time let go. And that document, even though your wishes are expressed, who's gonna say that that's the time has come? And so you need a health care power of attorney as well. So a financial power of attorney and a health care power of attorney. You need those documents. Now, some people want to, instead of a will or along with the will, they might want to create a trust, a revocable living trust document, a living trust. I'll say for people in California, because the rules are different than in Washington, going through probate and probating a will is very expensive and time consuming. And so lots of people in California use the trust to pass their estate, use that to distribute their estate. In Washington, I think the probate process is simple and quick, and so a trust isn't needed. A will's usually fine for most people, but for other factors, as far as control and anonymity, a living trust might be something that fits your situation. But while a lot of these documents are available online, and you can go the low cost way of creating documents for yourself, if you don't know the right questions, then you may end up with a document that looks pretty, but doesn't accomplish what you want to do. So for me, I've always advised my clients to consult with an attorney who's an expert in this, and let them guide you through that and help you create those documents. And then don't lock those documents up or don't bury them in the backyard. It's good to review them from time to time as your family changes. As your family gets bigger, maybe with kids, with marriages, or if a family gets smaller, with deaths or divorces. It's a good time to take a look at those documents, review them, and make sure that they're doing what you intend them.
Excellent. I'm going to go to Avery next, and another way of passing assets beyond your will is beneficiary designation forms on things, especially your retirement plan assets, and you can do those even without a will. But there's some things that you need to know about the pros and cons of naming various kinds of beneficiaries. So, Avery, we've got a couple minutes here to have you just talk a little bit about tax efficiency in estate planning, and a little bit about the philanthropic side of that versus giving to your family and or Uncle Sam. We're back to the buckets, and then tell us who can help us think through this.
Yeah, absolutely. So any time that we approach estate planning period, I think it comes back to a three-legged stool of advisors. If I'm a client, I want to have my CPA there, I want to have my estate planning attorney there, I want to have my wealth advisor there. That is the core group of advisors that should be assisting you in developing your plan. They get different parts of your life, and they've had different conversations with you, but you're paying for all of their perspectives, and bringing them together means that you're going to get a lot better advice than playing the same game you did when you were 5 years old and playing telephone. Oh, my attorney told me this. My wealth advisor told me this. That is about the worst way possible to plan. And so we start with bringing the three-legged stool together. Any other important actors? Charities that you plan to give to. Trustees that you intend to empower to make decisions after you're gone. Business operators, if you have a business that you're going to be transitioning. Any of those sort of ancillary actors, they want to know what your intentions are. If they can help you build your plan in a better way and help facilitate your goals, they're all very happy to participate. I would say definitely on the trustee and the charity front, you will not get a bad answer by bringing them into the fold earlier so that they're aware of your intentions. In terms of tax efficiency, charities don't pay income tax, which is phenomenal. Humans do. The best thing we can give to charity are assets that other people would pay income tax on. So retirement plans. If you leave a retirement plan to an individual, they get to pay income tax as they distribute those funds to themselves. A charity does not. If I make a gift in life, if I give a highly appreciated, let's say NVIDIA share to my best friend George, George would sell that share and pay income tax. I give that same share to a charity, they do not pay income tax. So as we're working through the buckets of planning, there are better opportunities to give some of those buckets assets than others. And so being super holistic and everything's got to go somewhere, we can identify the best place and most tax efficient place to put particular assets in line with your goals. And so that's end all be all from a tax efficiency perspective. Low basis assets or no basis assets, phenomenal for charity. High basis assets, we want those to go to your family. That's the best advice I can give you today.
Unanimous thumbs up. Time is flying, and we're going to have Kyle close us out here, and then we'll get to the Q&A. How do you talk to your clients about, again, there's the technical side, but there's the people and the value side. So how do you conduct that conversation? What are questions people should ask themselves when they're trying to incorporate their values into both these lifetime plans, but also into their estate plans for when they pass?
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. I always tell clients to meet with your financial advisor at least annually, because it's like going to see your primary care physician. Your health changes every year, and if you don't keep on top of it, something bad can happen and you didn't catch it on time. Same thing with your financial life. I always say that certified financial planners are like the primary care physician of finance. We help you look at the big picture. And I can't tell you how many times I've found out the client, either divorced and still had their ex-wife as a beneficiary, or one of my favorite stories is a client who had a friend of hers as a beneficiary who was older and dying of cancer. And I said, well, one of the things I say is whoever inherits this money, will they be a good steward of those funds? I'm going to give Eric Green a little props here. He gave me this book several years ago called Splitting Heirs by Ron Blue, and it talks about stewardship. And I asked my client, I said, if you die, would your friend be a good steward of that money? And what happens if she passes away? And she says, well, her daughter it would not be a good steward of that money. And I said, so then why leave your assets to her if it's going to potentially go to somebody you don't think would be a good steward of your hard-earned money? And as we got talking to her, I found out that she was a retired nurse. She got her nursing degree from WSU. And I said, have you ever thought of leaving a scholarship in your name? Because your legacy is being written right now. And if that meant a lot to you, what about considering a scholarship with these IRA funds? So I brought Teresa Boyer on board and we had lunch. And at the end of the day, she changed her IRA beneficiary to the WSU Foundation. And she passed away about a year ago. And now there is a scholarship for nursing in her name. And I know that gave her great joy knowing that she's going to help out future nurses. So how we look at the plan is when you talk with your financial advisors, ask yourself, are my beneficiaries going to be good stewards of this money? And, if not, I have no problem saying you can set up a trust because, trusts are set up when you don't trust a future generation. But I always say, think about giving to charity too, because you make a living by what you get, but you make a life by what you give.
I want to end on that, but I have more housekeeping to do and a couple of questions. Thank you all so much. I'm trying to think of how I can package some of these questions up. And two of the questions that we got are about, what if I can't afford a financial advisor? Or some inexpensive ways to get this kind of advice? And also, what do you do if you don't have any people in your family that you trust to act as an executor? What are some do it yourself or inexpensive ways to handle these big questions if you can't afford to go see someone? Any thoughts on that?
I'll try to tackle that.
Okay.
On the financial advisors space, if you feel like a consistent AUM-based advisor, so an advisor that is paid for managing your money based off of how much they custody, there are certain financial advisors that will do fee-only arrangements. So instead of paying for an ongoing, sort of check-in and regular support, you're paying to have a financial plan established one time, and that plan is really left to you to administer. That may or may not be the best arrangement because, again, you're not receiving that consistent ongoing support of somebody like Eric or Kyle, where they're holding your hand each step of the way. But that it is potentially a more inexpensive way to go if you're comfortable acting on a plan that's been built out for you.
Any thoughts? One came in about is AI a way to help ourselves? I'll have to say, just in my experience with myself and donors, it sometimes helps, but you've got to double check it because it has given bad advice on multiple occasions. And when I've checked in with a CPA to say, hey, is this thing AI told me right? The answer has sometimes been no. But are there prompts or things that you guys any of the three of you have experimented with that you think could help our end users, or you want to say at this point in time, I see Avery's, I hear your head shaking. At this point in time, for something this important, you got to tread really carefully.
I always like to say experience is the teacher that gives the test first and the lesson later. There's a lot to be said for people that have experience. AI is getting better, but it doesn't know you. AI will just give you the rote answers it thinks is right. And I've actually found mistakes with AI because it's still so new. And AI cannot figure out what's important to you. They can't figure out what's specific to you. So when you do, and I always say, don't be afraid to talk to an advisor thinking, that you don't have enough to meet with them. It's like what Avery said, there are financial planners that are fee-based only, that charge by the hour. There's those of us that that do manage assets, and then we do financial advice through asset management. But don't be afraid to talk to an advisor, and don't say I can't afford it. You just sometimes we do pro bono work because that's part of who we are. And I always tell my clients, if somebody's important to you, they're important to me. I'm happy to talk with them. It doesn't mean they'll become a client, but I'm always happy to talk with them. And then as far as that one question about hiring somebody, if you don't know who would be a good steward from a trustee point of view,
Yeah.
There's a reason why there's a place in Spokane called Washington Trust Bank. There are professional institutions that can handle that for you, if you want to ask them about those services.
Excellent. Well, I wish we could go on, but I'm going to thank all of you so much for spending your valuable time with us here, and your knowledge. And Mike and Cindy, thanks for coming back on so we can thank you. If there are teachers listening to this, feel free to reach out to the Alumni Association, and we can get you hooked up with the seminars that Mike and Cindy provide. And we're also going to be following up with some links, a charitable gift planning booklet from the WSU Foundation that talks about wise ways to give charitably, but also just some outlines to help you start thinking about your estate planning. And then Kyle also graciously provided a fantastic booklet I read last night that's called Guide to Retirement and Income Planning from RBC Wealth Management. So you'll get links to both of those. As we close, we invite you to just think about maybe the top 3 things that you have learned here, action items that you want to take away. We hope you found this session to be both educational and practical, and stay tuned for a lot of other events that we have like this on many topics beyond retirement. Really pleased that all of you could be here with us today, and go Cougs. Thanks so much.